Welcome everybody, and I look forward to speaking with Michael on the topic of advanced analytics. And there's a lot of interest regarding this topic. We are constantly reading in the news and in the media regarding big data or data scientists, how they're transforming companies. But what we wanted to do today is dive in a little bit deeper. What does that mean? What is it? What are data scientists doing exactly with R, or what is advanced analytics, and how are companies transforming their business? So I'll be giving an introduction to what advanced analytics is and how companies are seeing it and what the different applications are. And Michael, in turn, will be going and diving in a little bit deeper with his experience with customers in terms of implementing advanced analytics. And what are some of the implications are to the business, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A. So without further ado, this wouldn't be a proper webinar without a definition slide of advanced analytics. So let's go into a little bit deeper on that. So there is this maturity and maturity of companies who work with data. And the first step and the first journey of any company that they need to go through is trying to understand and report on data. So, this has been around for maybe the past 20 years, where companies are using maybe more legacy tools where they're trying to understand what's going on in their business. So what happened? Describe to me the sales, describe to me the marketing conversions, describe to me the quality metrics that we're following in our production plant. And that's been around for 20 years, and that's the foundation that I believe companies need to look at. And then they want to know, well, why is something happening? So this is, understanding what is impacting sales, or why did quality go down? And I think this is where a lot of companies find themselves now. This is where majority of business intelligence solutions are implemented, is getting to understanding of why, because that can be challenging. The why could be stored in one data set or in a different data set. It could be in different data silos. It could be in a data warehouse, but it's hard to get to. So a lot of focus has been on terms of making that process very easy for business users to get insights into what is going on and why is it happening. But we wanted to spend today on what will happen and how can we make that happen. So when we're referring to advanced analytics, it's looking towards the future, discovering what insights and how you can use those insights to predict future outcomes. So you can't make a future prediction without looking at the past. So it's really understanding historical performance and how that impacts future outcomes. And with that outcome, we want to look at recommendations, how you can improve the business. So in terms of driving new sales, predict if you implement this lead gen, that this will result in that sales, or if you increase quality care and this division in a hospital, you'll have less readmissions. That will drive fundamental changes in terms of how you run the business. Michael, was there anything more that you wanted to add to this slide from your perspective?
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be a speaker today. Yeah, from my experience, what I could add to that is that even bigger companies, most of the companies fall into the first group of companies focused on hindsight. And very slowly they are advancing for foresight. So in a sense, the business intelligence market is kind of ahead of the curve in comparison to the customers. Yes, that's what my experience shows. Plus, the smaller the company, which is quite interesting, the further they take it, the foresight approach. They are more open, more progressive in terms of using very advanced and sophisticated solutions in order to get the optimization, which is the goal here.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that is, Michael, in terms of why smaller companies can go further along this maturity model than larger corporations?
I think it's mainly due to inherent intensive processes within large organizations, which can be of a blocker in terms of adopting new challenges and creating entirely new procedures.
Right. I think that leads in very well to the next slide in terms of who's using what and where this power is going with advanced analytics. In my opinion, I think to expand upon what Michael was saying is that it's also a cultural shift. So you might have executives who are familiar with the Cognizes, the Microsofts, the business objects, the big brands in the marketplace who've been focusing a lot on the descriptive or historical data. And now they're thinking about self-service data in terms of where you see some of the leaders in that space. But we're talking about advanced analytics, and that's where we're going in the next couple of years. And that's where companies want to have a competitive edge. So that transition is happening now. You see a lot of companies, SciSense included, where we're pushing the narrative in terms of how companies can go about pushing advanced analytics within the company. So if you're a more conservative or have a lot of processes internally that make this more difficult, there might be smaller companies that can, implement these faster, get deeper insights into future predictions, and maybe be more nimble. And this is always a challenge for a larger company in order to keep on top of things. So advanced analytics can be a way to retain competitive advantage or drive profit margins, for example. So what are some of the things that companies are looking at when doing advanced analytics? So there's three things that I think we're going to focus on this webinar: data mining, big and complex data sets, and ways to utilize that data to monetize. You also have, and there's also other things that companies are doing, such as intelligence-based location analytics that a lot of companies are seeing and using, and that can also be researched on the internet to get what might be applicable to specific use cases that you have. But essentially, when we're doing what-if analysis, so what happens if we do this to predict the changes, we see a lot in our work here, Michael and I, in terms of data mining, is really being able to explore the data. So these could be things where we're seeing artificial intelligence and machine learning, for example, where we want to understand patterns in data, anomalies in data, things that are difficult for the human eye to really intuitively gravitate towards. So we may run reports on things that we want to know, but what about things that we don't know that we need to know? And that is where our artificial intelligence and machine learning is making great progress, understanding the relationships between different inputs that maybe aren't naturally, where we don't gravitate towards. And so in order to be able to do that well, you're going to be able to increase performance. In addition, we hear a lot about big data, and that's a really exciting field, but most generally, most of the time we hear complex data. So that would be, we have data in different places and we need to be able to analyze that. So that's a different type of challenge, and being able to access that data and then have a significant performance on the query so you can get those insights. But once you're able to ask ad hoc questions, what if we did this, how would it impact that, and get results in seconds versus minutes or even hours, allows you to do improved decision making. And we are seeing companies now, and Michael will give an example of where companies are doing this within minutes or even hours of understanding changes within the business, and can make changes to the decision process within an hour or within even minutes to decrease inventory, increase profit margins, increase sales, which is really exciting how companies are using this. In addition, you can also expand and drive deeper benchmarking, taking in data from other data sets, for example. So if you want to benchmark sales with weather from the weather service, for example, you can add that as well. And lastly, monetizing data. So we see now companies who have so much insight into their data or have a lot of data that they're able to develop new products and services. So I see this with Verizon, for example. They're a cell phone provider here in the States. They have tons and tons of data on all their clients, where they're making phone calls, where they are, what are they looking at, and then they sell that data to companies who are looking to buy and then augment their own sales and marketing process. Or and companies want to embed analytics into their own product that make their software more competitive. There's a lot of different ways you can utilize advanced analytics in order to expand your spectrum of services and products. And it's a very exciting space that we see a lot of development coming in. How do companies see this in terms of their putting their money where their mouth is? So in this slide, I apologize, it's a little grainy. Bain Data, or a division of Bain Consulting, put together this slide, which I thought was really interesting. Companies are providing a significant investment in data and advanced analytics. So most of the companies are investing a good chunk of money. Major is always relative, so I don't have exact numbers, but from their own description that they thought it was a big part, but even a quarter said it was strategic that companies are doing that. So this is really a place where a lot of companies see that this is something they have to excel in and really expect a great return. So, almost half expect a significant or transformational return in being able to leverage the assets of advanced analytics and analytics in general, being able to deploy it within the enterprise. So I do have some stats from another Accenture study where $6.5 billion of capital across 650 different companies was deployed in 2017, and that was an increase of $5.7 billion in 2016. So this is one of the major aspects of growth within the space and where companies are investing to see returns. Michael, I thought I would hand it over to you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the different advanced analytic components that companies are deploying as part of these companies' investment in analytics.
Thank you, Adam. So basically, I would structure it in the following kind of 6 sections. So natural language processing, and that would be both natural language processing in terms of interpreting voice or text commands, and also generation of natural language based on the data context provided. Also, our integration, we're using very advanced and sophisticated statistical models to predict some outcomes, to group or somehow analyze the data in more advanced fashion, as well as using very basic statistics or very basic business functions to achieve very interesting results, which I would personally call advanced analytics as well. And then at the end, we have artificial intelligence and machine learning, which helps you to automatically detect what's happening interesting within your data. Okay, so the natural language processing in general, I call it an active data consumption, in which you have to actually take interaction with some kind of intelligent being at the end that will provide you the answers. So either that will be a text processing by using bots like Skype bots, which is also a part of Sisense, or voice commands, which you can utilize through Alexa. That can also be embedded within various business intelligence solutions. And the other part of that will be natural language generation, when based on actual data context which you are looking at, you can get a descriptive information or insight based on your data, which is in the form of a natural language, which is then much more easy to digest by people who are less technical and more business oriented. And I think with that, we are getting to very important notes about all of this. What the advanced analytics would be for is that this is one of the main reasons I see people doing that stuff, is to reduce the technical skill that you really need in order to actively and proactively interact with your data.
Right, and I would agree with that. What we see a lot here at Sisense is that there's a lot of interest in natural language generation to help people with data literacy. Analysts will typically understand a tree chart or a sunburst or a lot of different types of visualizations, but maybe the common business user doesn't really understand what these visualizations are trying to show, or that maybe it'll be misinterpreted. So the beauty of natural language generation is that when it describes what the visualization is showing, it really enhances the understanding of what the visualization is trying to show and show the patterns in there. So it really increases the literacy of the visualization and expands wider the people who can use it. And with natural language processing, the idea here is that we want to interact with data in a much more natural fashion. So instead of having to go on a dashboard, you can use it in a natural way. We all use like Skype or Microsoft Chat, for example. Maybe we want to interact with that and not having to go in a different program. Or maybe we're using Alexa in our homes, so maybe we want to have that in certain circumstances within the business. And so this is way we expand analytics into our natural environment instead of just having to go on a dashboard.
Okay, and then we get to the area I find quite interesting, although it's quite difficult to utilize actually, because you need actually somebody who has the right skills in order to understand what statistics are, how to create a proper statistical model and all of that. But then at the end you can get very interesting results. You know, there are models within R that can predict future, you know, with the right amount of the input, you can get output which is very close to what would really happen. You can't predict the future with that, but you can be as close as possible with that. And then that gives you a lot of advantage and also allows you to predict future trends or future patterns which are not happening yet, but the data is enough to provide you that this is where the market will go with your product, for example. Yes, and then also you can use the simple statistics and rankings, the very clever use cases. An example of using rankings is if you have a set of organizations which are measured by even 10 different markers which are not correlated at all. So what you could do is you could rank all those organizations across those measures individually, then average the ranking per organization and then rank that again. And then you should give a very clear picture of where the organizations globally are, taking into account all of those 10 measures, although you are using a very simple function as rank. Yes. And here we have an example of using R actively when inputting the data which is based around a hypothetical disease, and you have two components which are calculated out of various medical pieces of information, like the weight of the patient, the blood pressure, BMI indicator, and so on. And then if you run it through proper R model, you can get information which patients are more likely to get a particular disease. In this case, we are talking about diabetes. So based on a few input parameters, you can get an outcome and predict, okay, this patient does not have, is not diagnosed with diabetes yet, but it is very highly likely that it will happen very soon to that patient. And then at the end, the last section is artificial intelligence and machine learning, which I call passive data consumption, when the user does not have to proactively interact with data. The only thing they need to do is to react to what the machine is going to serve to them. Yes, and that's mainly based around detecting anomalies or unpredicted or unpredictable patterns within your data that maybe not directly are going to save your company, but they can show you a different path your company can take in terms of what you're doing, either creating new product or changing the way you are delivering your services, for example. And for that, I have a very short presentation of the live usage for that. If you can handle it over to me, Adam.
Sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is an example of a company which is a reseller of kitchen and bathroom appliances like washing machines, dishwasher, and so on. So what they do is basically every hour they are monitoring what is the margin for a particular group of products or a particular brand. This is where they are tracking to see if the interest on that is getting up or down, whether they are reaching the agreed goals on a daily basis. And this allows them to interact and quickly react to what this market actually at this very moment expecting. On the other hand, also, they are monitoring their current stock to prevent for over or understocking. Yes, so they are actively every hour monitoring how close they are to bottom and top threshold to not overstock or to not be understock for the upcoming days. Yes, so with that, you don't need to actually enter the dashboard, read the report in order to get that insight on your own. It's being delivered to you automatically. As a bonus in here, all of those margin markers are under machine learning setup, which will detect anomalies. So it will inform you not only if the goals are reached, but also if something out of the line has happened. And you should have a look at that, be that a positive occurrence or a negative one. This way you can be very flexible in terms of reacting almost in real time to what's happening within your company. And we are talking about a company which has 20 different locations and over 50 employees. Yes. Mm-hmm. So this kind of insight, which allows you to instantly react to certain situations, can be a lifesaver.
I think you bring up a really good point, is that with the interest of machine learning and artificial intelligence, it's really speeding up the otherwise manual process of getting insights. So you talked about the R and the advanced statistical work. Those are the most in-demand jobs probably in America or North America and in Europe. It's a very desirable job. It's very highly sought after, but there's not enough people to do it, and it's still intensive. So if artificial intelligence can speed up maybe a lot of the manual data preparation or processes, or maybe even provide some of that insight that a statistician or a data scientist might do in certain levels, it will allow you to have a greater breadth and depth of insight that one person could do by themselves. And especially here with machine learning, we could certainly understand anomalies to data, but it might take us days or weeks to even understand that. But if the machine can learn and build upon each iteration of data and see what the normal patterns are, if something falls out of that, you can be instantly alerted to it on your mobile device or in an email, or you can react in advance of any other threshold or happening within your company, is really kind of a game changer for a lot of companies. And that's why machine learning, I think, is so important in advanced analytics and analytics in general, to be able to get a hold of understanding what's in your company and taking decisions when you need to in order to prevent something much larger from happening.
And yeah, on top of that, I think it's also important that, if you can engage that with C-level, which is usually a very hard task to do, they don't have to do actually nothing in order to analyze the data, except for, interpreting that. So, if that information reaches C-level or, appropriate manager, they might develop, discover a new pattern and develop new products or new service that you can provide based on what you know.
Right. Yeah, we didn't even talk about the cultural changes or shift that have to happen in order for something like this to really be implemented. And yes, that's critical. If there needs to be executive C-level support for these types of initiatives and insights, because it is a cultural change within a company, and this doesn't happen just on the ground level. So I would agree with you 100% on that. Okay, so I'll take the screen back. Okay. Let's just make sure I'm showing the right screen. Yeah, okay, great. All right. So I'll start first, and then maybe Michael can share some of his perspectives on the key takeaways. But to summarize what we were attempting to present today is that advanced analytics, a lot of interest, a lot of hype being generated around it, and I think for good cause. Companies, individuals, organizations, from governments to nonprofits to hospitals to for-profit companies, really want to understand and predict the future, at least to the best of their ability, but they need to be able to do it with historical data. That data can come from big data or complex data sets across the organization, and being able to understand that has always been a challenge in order to predict future innovations, in order to predict future outcomes. There have been significant innovations in machine learning, data mining, natural language processing, artificial intelligence, et cetera, to speed up that process to help really make business users understand what is happening quicker and easier than before, without being reliant on data scientists exclusively or not being reliant on IT in order to generate the data set so analysts can get to it, but getting that information within seconds or even minutes of when it happened. Once you're able to do this and move up the maturity scale from the historical perspective to the future perspective, it will transform the company. It's critical to have C-level support in this transformation because it will change how you invest in this technology in terms of your people, infrastructure, and software, how you're going to monetize this in terms of additional products, services, fees that you will be able to offer, how it will affect your profitability, competitive stance in the marketplace, and do much more than you ever had previously. And as the slide showed, more than 50% of companies are investing heavily in this strategy, so it might be a good time for you to evaluate your own in terms of where you want to go and where you see your place in this market and what your competitors are doing.
Yeah, I generally agree with you. I mean, most of the points you mentioned, they are actually happening right now as well. The companies are transforming by using advanced analytics. But I think the main thing to look afterwards that you have to be really open-minded in order to use that. And you have to really try to embrace the changes, you know, to move from the regular reporting, the passive dashboarding, you know, in order to progress with that, you know, doing some machine learning using bots or Alexa in order to interact with data on a different level. And also, you have to be prepared to take the data, the things that data will put up at you, embrace it, and try to, you know, convert it somehow within your organization to new product, new services, or, you know, or face the fact that you really need to reinvent your strategy or readopt in order to survive on the market. And I think that's also a very important takeaway.
All right. I think it's a good point, Michael. Do you have an example or any kind of clients that come to mind and maybe some companies that made that shift that might be helpful for the audience to get a perspective on?
Yeah, I mean, that example I've shown, yes, that for example, when they changed from, you know, very passive dashboarding when they were entering the dashboard, you know, once a day or even less frequently, and now they get the almost real-time data feed that allows them to interact with the data, interact to the reality with quicker, with more speed, you know, be more flexible with the entire organization's situation. Yes, you can imagine a situation when the sales manager who's doing, you know, regular sales reporting is entering the dashboard 3 days after a critical situation had taken place. Yes. Mm-hmm. And 3 days after that, the situation will be, it could be unsalvageable, that you are at the point when, you know, point of no return, that it could be very difficult to, you know, to maneuver through that. But when you get instant information about very bad behavior within your data, you can react instantly, you know, and avoid this kind of a very difficult situation, which could take, you know, weeks or even months to salvage from the mess that could be created. So I think that's very important, and that's the case with my customer who had difficult situations in the past, and right now they are able to react instantly and avoid, you know, huge pitfalls.
All right, that's a really good perspective. Thanks, Michael. Okay, so I think we're at the stage now of the webinar where we can open up the questions. Sophia, are there any for us today?
Thank you, Adam and Michael. Yes, let us jump to the Q&A portion. I have a question for both of you guys. What are the biggest challenges that you are facing when implementing advanced analytics? Or what are the biggest challenges that you see?
Do you want to start, Michael, or should I start?
Yeah, I mean, so from my end is to actually convince customers or users that those things really work. You know, people don't believe in that yet, yes, but when I start showing what you can do with that. People's eyes are open and they really start embracing this new ability to even predict the future. So I think the biggest challenge in here is to convince end users that this is really working, and you can rely on the outcome. You can rely on the outcome as long as you take it, as something that you need to work on, but still it's a very valuable piece of information that can move you forward, or even entire company.
Yeah, I think that's true. From my perspective, a big challenge is getting awareness, understanding, and a business case put together. So everything we talked about is a very high level and all makes sense, but then when you get to your own organization, it's really putting together a POC and a business case for a specific instance within your corporate where you think this could really benefit your organization. So finding what it could be, what it would look like, getting executive support and budget in order to build out a POC for its initial use case. If that is successful, then you can build upon it and grow more naturally and organically within the company. But once you have that initial foundation set, then you understand what technology you need, what the limitations are, what your requirements, and that generally is a natural evolution of getting support for the initial start.
Perfect. We have another question that came in. Is big data equal to high quality insights?
No. I don't think so. Just because you have a lot of data doesn't mean it gives you a lot of insights. So it's really being able to understand the right data and the right combination of maybe different data sources in order to get the insights that you need. Very few companies are actually analyzing all their data, even if they have terabytes of it. It doesn't always make sense in terms of limitations that provides. But being able to analyze the right data, or it could be complex data coming from different places, and understanding the relationships and dependencies between those different data sets will actually generate the proper insights in order to move your business forward.
Perfect. What are the biggest gains of using advanced analytics?
Well, in my opinion, that's mainly you could be ahead of the curve of your competition. I think that's the main goal. The other goal could be that you can detect, certain bad behavior within your organization. Yes, certain. I mean bad. I mean not that somebody's doing something really bad on purpose, but rather, they are unaware they are doing processes in the wrong way and causing some damage, which can't be seen, by regular analysis, by regular reporting and such. Yes, so I think this ability to get information about anomalies or unexpected situations instantly put in front of you on the silver plate, that would be the main gain.
Great. I think we have time for one more question here. How does one measure business value and ROI with advanced analytics?
So that's a good question. I think as I mentioned previously, maybe you want to measure impact. So what are you looking to achieve in that initial use case? Is it decreased inventory or stable inventory, as Michael presented? Is it better sales forecasting? Is it more money? Is it a new sales stream or revenue stream for the company? That is one way of measuring impact. The other way of measuring impact is how many people are actually using the insights in their business. So user stickiness, for example, is another way of measuring impact. There has to be an outcome in order to justify the expenditures and investment in this, and that needs to be clearly outlined by you up front. For a hospital, it will be different than it is for an NGO or a nonprofit, and will be different for a government. So if you can measure how many people are using this information, the impact to your organization in terms of whatever KPI you're looking to improve upon, and then the outcome and how that changes in terms of reduced X or increased Y or dispersed Z, I think will help you in terms of measuring the impact and the ROI benefit.
Totally agree.
Okay.
Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our webinar. I want to say a big thank you to Adam and Michael for sharing your knowledge and expertise, and a big thank you to everyone that joined us today. And we look forward to seeing you on our next webcast. Have a great day.